At the end of that, we'll at the end of this presentation, we'll kind of provide an opportunity for asking some questions. For that part of things, we'll go ahead and leave the recording on for the initial part of it, just in case there's any general questions that people feel comfortable answering or asking that you're comfortable with us recording. But then we will shut off the recording and you'll have opportunities to ask questions after that, if you would prefer to do that. Don't think there's any other housekeeping stuff before we get going. If there are any questions that come up as I'm going through this presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat. I think I'll probably have Caden keep an eye on that for me. If he notices anything that is kind of relevant to kind of stop me and kind of ask me in the moment, he'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll make sure that we get to answering the questions towards the later part of the lab or the later part of the meeting. Also, I guess for everybody who's joined us tonight, many of the people who have their cameras on are actually members of the lab. And so we do have several lab members here as well to help answer questions and help clarify anything that you have that you want to know about this lab. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. So for this lab, I think one of the things that's helpful for understanding this lab and kind of where it comes from is kind of understanding just a little bit about me, at least still at this point. So my name is Michael Yeager. I'm currently a medical student here at The Ohio State University College of Medicine. I have a PhD in social psychology and a master's in public health. And I've got some other credentials for some other things, but I will be staying around here as a resident in the family medicine program. I was part of a special family medicine primary care track that guaranteed me a spot in the family medicine residency program as part of attending medical school here. And so I went to University of Nebraska for my undergraduate experience, which is why there's some of you on tonight that are from the University of Nebraska. I started my graduate school out at Colorado State in social psychology, finished that up at Syracuse University, went to upstate for my MPH, and then I came here for my education. And I think what's important about that is to understand that I've been in several different institutions kind of through my journey in higher education. I've spent a lot of time kind of in this pre-med world. I started college, like I said, back in 2007. And it really wasn't until 2019 that I got into medical school. And so I spent a long period of time kind of going through that process and kind of learning kind of what it takes to get here. I also spent some time at Upstate actually teaching medical students and residents and getting kind of experience in that setting. And one of the things that became clear to me is, a gay, polyamorous Native American man kind of going through this space, is that the spaces that we're in academia, especially going into healthcare, are not necessarily built for everybody that's trying to get into medicine. And there's a lot of groups that have been kind of historically excluded and are still currently excluded from really being in healthcare that, creates a real problem for us as we look at our profession and what it is that we're trying to do moving forward. Especially being a part of a Department of Family and Community Medicine, I strongly believe that we need to have a healthcare workforce that represents and reflects the communities that we're serving. And right now, we just simply don't have that with who is actually making it into medical school and other healthcare professions. And so to have helped address some of these disparities, this lab has kind of come up and been something that kind of came about in that way. And so, for me in particular, I've worked on the admissions committee here at the medical school, and I've been involved in admissions in some other places. And there's this concept of holistic medical school admissions. But one of the things that I want to make clear is that what is really, happened in practice is that it's turned into a little bit of a game of blackout bingo. There's a lot of different expectations that we have for students that are coming into medicine, or even honestly, most of the other kind of healthcare and PhD kind of fields in terms of types of experiences that you have to get before you get to kind of this phase of training. And one of the really kind of key pieces of experience that has been challenging for people to get is research experience. But again, with this process, you're expected to check all of these boxes. You're expected to have all these different types of experiences. And what I know from my experience kind of being in the academic kind of research setting is that not all research settings are healthy settings for students to be a part of. There's a lot of kind of interpersonal dynamics that play out within these spaces. There's a lot of power differentials that play out within these spaces. And so for me, I've personally found it concerning and problematic that we require everybody to have research experience. And so again, part of conceptualizing this lab was around trying to think about how do we address the barriers that students face as they're trying to get this experience, especially because research experience is something that admissions committees kind of look for to help inform them about how students are performing in a lot of different domains. On the medical education side of things, what you'll find is that research experience is used to help kind of inform understanding of meeting many of the competencies that students are being evaluated on when they apply to medical school. But when we look at kind of the barriers that are in place in terms of people making it into the healthcare profession, especially people that are making it into the healthcare profession from, again, these kind of historically and currently excluded backgrounds, what we see is that there are a lot of challenges. It's not, necessarily simple to go from point A, beginning of undergrad to point B and get into some sort of graduate, professional training in healthcare. There's a lot of different things that kind of play into success in that process, and being able to find opportunities in research experience. And in particular, when we look at research experience, there's a lot of these different domains, such as kind of expenses, within the financial cost domain, with respect to kind of having people and kind of access to opportunities, having role models, having professional networks that can get you into labs, those types of things that all play into kind of getting to the next level. And so again, as I kind of thought about this lab and kind of conceptualized its development, and was talking with one of my colleagues, Aaron Thomas, who runs the Aspire program. One of the things that became very clear to us is that, especially during the COVID period, we needed to find ways to adapt and create opportunities for students that, weren't finding other ways to get the research experience that they need to get to this next level. So the other kind of challenge that comes up with all of this is if we really think about kind of traditional lab structures, they're not really built to train students how to do things and kind of build students up as professionals. What often happens with a traditional lab structure is you're coming into an environment where you have a primary investigator that is focusing on developing some sort of area of inquiry and trying to develop a new technology or trying to understand a specific process. And that's what they've built their career around. Underneath of them, they've got lab managers and they have fellows that are studying them and trying to kind of understand what it is that they're doing and being able to kind of get trained from them, but really in more of like this kind of apprenticeship type of way. You have graduate students that are also kind of working in that domain, often even under kind of fellows and lab managers in terms of getting experience. And then you have undergrads who end up really in this type of model being cheap, relatively unskilled labor. In some of the wet labs, for example, undergrads are often tasked with kind of running different gel assays, making gel assays, doing cleaning processes, sterilizing equipment, things along those lines that do help the research enterprise and do kind of give you exposure to that environment. But again, it's not something that's necessarily created and structured around you learning and developing as a future professional. It's really meant as kind of a kind of opening of the door to you to this type of domain, where you're given opportunities to maybe build yourself up the ladder and kind of get more meaningful experiences. But again, it's not really built around you. It's built around the research enterprise, and it's built around getting research funding and turning out kind of a research product. And again, I think I've kind of talked about these. I had slides on this. But the other thing that it does do is it does kind of force assimilation, which when we're talking about this diversity aspect of things, and thinking about, really diversifying the workforce that we're trying to create in healthcare, this can be problematic because again, it kind of forces people to behave in a way, act in a way, think in a way that may not necessarily be consistent with people's values, and may force people out of this space that we really do need to have in healthcare. And for these kind of last 2 points, the main thing that I want to kind of emphasize is, again, when you're in a lab like this, a lot of what ends up happening is students kind of learn that putting out a research product is kind of the most important thing. And in my opinion, it really teaches potential, like future researchers, future scholars, relatively bad scientific kind of mentality and approach. Because when you get so focused on fulfilling kind of requirements to maintain a grant, or doing things kind of chasing money, chasing kind of prestige, or chasing trying to get a poster created just so that you can go to a conference, so you can do the networking, so you can do whatever to kind of check the boxes. Again, the products that can kind of come out of that are not very good quality products. And they don't really teach you how to do science in a very thorough, efficient, and effective way. The other thing that it does, which I've already kind of alluded to, talked about, is it does expose people to really toxic power dynamics and kind of culture. This was something that I experienced as a graduate student. I had some really inappropriate kind of things happen to me kind of in that space. I had some situations that I was in where I was asked to do work that I really didn't want to do, but I felt like I had to do because, it was an expectation of somebody that I was working for. And so, it pushed me up to, at times, working 90 hours a week in doing stuff that ultimately did not get me anywhere. I ended up doing a lot of work for other people that I did not get any sort of credit for. It was just kind of expected that I did this work as part of kind of going through this process. And so again, for you as kind of pre-health students coming into this space, I really don't think you should be a part of that. I think you should be getting experience, you should be learning about research, but you should not be forced into those types of dynamics. There's also other things that kind of happen in this space. I did have some kind of inappropriate kind of sexual advances kind of made on me at conferences. I had, just kind of weird things come up around kind of feeling like there were stipulations for me to get research funding that, again, were not appropriate stipulations. And so again, I think it's really important when we think about requiring research experience, that we think about the types of environments that we're kind of pushing students into. And so again, the hope with this lab is that we're doing things to kind of help reduce those types of power structures and try to make it kind of a safer, healthier environment for everybody involved. And so again, that's kind of where the Power Skills Lab comes into play and what it is that we're trying to do. If you look at our mission, what our mission really centers around is trying to provide learners from marginalized communities with high quality research experience that, what we've been focusing on has really been systematic search review methodology, because that's what I think this lab can kind of teach people effectively. But we're doing that to help make you effective as you apply to your postgraduate programs and move further into kind of the healthcare field. The other thing that the group decided was important to kind of articulate as we went through our kind of revision of our mission, vision, values, was making sure that we actually articulate a community mission kind of among ourselves for what it is that we're trying to do within this lab space. And so one of the things that we're really kind of committed to doing as part of that mission is supporting our lab members in their journey to becoming competitive applicants through developing a peer community, through mentorship, and through through developing an alumni and professional network. And that's part of work that is continuing and things that we're hoping to expand on in this upcoming year. But again, I think this gives you an idea of what it is that we're trying to be and where it is that we're trying to head. The ultimate goal of all of this is to empower the learners that are in our lab from marginalized communities to become impactful healthcare and research professionals. And so again, it's about trying to translate skills. It's trying to help people gain comfort and experience so that you can move to the next level and be more effective in everything that you're trying to do. With respect to our values, we really center accessibility, collaboration, compassion, engagement, learning, passion, and justice as things that we believe are essential to kind of this lab and kind of what we all kind of come together and agree upon as being the core of who we are. And it's also the core of who it is that we are looking to bring into this lab space. Especially as we've been talking about this recruitment process, passion is something that has come up over and over again as something that we find to be a really important aspect of who we're bringing into this lab space. We don't necessarily, expect people to come in here with kind of all the skills that they need to do this work right away. In fact, we are looking for people that don't necessarily have a lot of research experience, that are trying to kind of break into this space and trying to gain this type of experience, but are very passionate about what it is that we're trying to do, wanting to get involved and wanting to kind of use kind of this experience and this work to do better for our communities and do better for themselves as they move forward in their career. To help with this, there's been kind of a collaboration of a wide number of people from the University of Nebraska, from Ohio State, and from upstate that helped to kind of support this work and kind of get it moving forward. When we think about, again, kind of what it is that we're doing in this lab and how we're going about kind of conducting our research, what we focus on doing are called systematic searches and reviews. What these do is these produce a scientific product that help to summarize the research literature. And so it isn't that we're necessarily running experiments on things and doing kind of empiric work in that way. But what we are doing is we are taking, we're kind of going and doing a little bit of a higher level process where we're going out and we're looking at, for example, right now we're looking at all the studies that have been published and all of the kind of journal articles that have been published related to the barriers that students with disability face in terms of getting to medical school. And the reason that we're going through and we're kind of trying to collect all of those articles and bring them into one space is so that we can help kind of current medical educators and researchers understand what does this literature actually say. There's a lot of different articles that are out there in a lot of different spaces. It's not necessarily easy to bring all of this stuff together. And so what we're doing is we are bringing all of this together in a way where we are going out and we are including all of the articles that have been published on this. We are, kind of objectively going through and coding this information and processing it in a way where we can provide kind of an objective summary of what exists out there in the world. And we can sit back and we can help kind of identify, where are the gaps in our knowledge and our understanding around this topic? Where are kind of our strengths and understanding? What do we seem to know quite well as being barriers and challenges based on what has been published and scientifically supported? And so again, this is not, like I said, running a study, in a lab where we're trying to figure out a specific process. This is something a little bit higher level where we're kind of doing summary type of work. But there is a scientific process that goes into this. There is a way, there are protocols that we follow to actually make this happen. They're actually quite detailed, and you don't need to get caught up in reading all the kind of details about this now. But what I want to emphasize is that there is a very systematic process around this. And what you as a research assistant in this lab are trained to do, are trained on how to execute this protocol, how to look at this information in an objective way and code it in an objective way so that we can actually do this type of synthesis and we can get all of the data that we need. The other thing that we're finding is that teaching students how to kind of do this process does help to prepare them to participate in qualitative research as well, which requires a lot of the same sort of skill sets of understanding a research protocol and understanding definitions and having to sit down, look at information, kind of process it and use your brain to kind of code things into different categories. And so one of the things that we are going to be kind of trialing in this upcoming years, we are going to be partnering with one of my medical student colleagues on running a kind of relatively small qualitative study, again, that's going to kind of be powered by the kind of people here in this lab to help make this research kind of happen and kind of provide the kind of technical support that's necessary to move this type of project forward. And so again, as part of being a part of this lab, types of methodology that you get exposed to are the systematic search and review methodology, which is actually really kind of an important skill set to learn, because there's a lot of medical centers right now, including our own, that are actually providing like paid and like free training for employees to learn how to do this skill, because this is what underlies evidence-based medicine. For you to like make evidence-based medicine recommendations, you have to start off by doing a systematic search and review. And so again, this is a skill that you kind of get from that. Like I said, qualitative research is something that we're going to be exploring as well through that partnership. But then the other kind of methodology that we've kind of been focusing on, working on applying in all of this is program plan and evaluation methodology. And so if you have any sort of interest in public health, addressing health disparities, developing programs that kind of impact kind of issues out in the community, that's another type of methodology that students in this lab, you know, have the opportunity to be exposed to. We don't actually care about that much. So I'm going to move to this. As I mentioned, one of the things that we really try to do in this lab is center our undergraduate kind of learners and really try to create a more horizontal power structure. There is a technical guidance team, which is what I am a part of. Jeremy, a French lawyer who is also kind of on this meeting right now, is also a part of this technical guidance team. She's actually a professional evaluator at Upstate Medical University and was in the same MPH program as I was when I was working there. And she actually also worked in the lab that I helped to kind of set up there. And so, you know, we kind of helped to provide a lot of kind of guidance on how to do this stuff and a lot of supervision on how to execute these types of projects, because this is what the lab that we set up did. But we also have our peer board members who are starting to have kind of an evolving role that's going to be more of a group of alumni that are going to be helping to contribute to kind of the further mentorship and development of the lab team. And in the future, we're hoping to also have faculty partners that we're, you know, really working with on, again, kind of small research projects like this qualitative research project that we're working on with one of my colleagues, so that we can help to support some of the type of work that they're doing based on the skills that the students in this lab have. But again, everything really focuses on helping the undergraduates in this lab develop skills that they can apply to execute these research projects, and providing them with the mentorship and training and support that they need over their time in the lab so they can move on and be you know, successful when they apply to their health professions programs. There's a wide variety of kind of roles in the lab. These kind of different titles are going to be kind of changing and evolving as we kind of have our meeting here in the upcoming kind of month or two to identify kind of leaders for the lab moving into the upcoming year. But we have lab manager positions, we have project manager positions, data manager positions. You know, we're hoping to have kind of a position that focuses a little bit more on like data quality and training. We're hoping to have, you know, a position that focuses a little bit more heavily on evaluation and kind of development of the lab. And then, of course, we have our research assistants, which most of you kind of, you know, coming into the lab would be a part of that kind of research assistant pool and really helping to, again, drive the research projects that this lab is focusing on. But with that said, even as research assistants, there are opportunities for leadership and for taking responsibility for leading different kind of functions within the lab. And so, for example, as part of this selection process for our next group of RAs, that's not something that Jeremy and I are actually making decisions on. That's something that's being led by kind of a subcommittee of lab members from this lab, who are going to be the ones doing the interviews, evaluating applications, and identifying, which of their peers essentially they feel are the best fit to come into this space. And again, part of that kind of handling things in that way is to try to get rid of some of those kind of hierarchical power dynamics, and to remove my bias and kind of Jeremy's bias from this process. Because again, we're not you all kind of at where you are in your training. We've kind of gone through our training in some different ways. And part of this lab is trying to find some ways, again, to kind of remove some of those kind of older ways of thinking. And we've kind of felt like one of the best ways to do that is, again, to kind of remove ourselves from that specific decision-making process, because we don't want our biases to be influencing that. Some kind of again, kind of key features of this lab is a little bit of a summary, is that it does, kind of check the box of providing you with quality research experience. But again, it does so in a way that really focuses on personal and professional development. And so, I believe one of the major selling points for this lab is that as a member of this lab, you have an opportunity to really kind of work with me, work with other people in the lab, to figure out, how do you improve where you are at currently and get to that next level. A lot of times what I spend time doing kind of in my meetings with students is just trying to get a sense of like, where are you at now? What can we do to kind of help you take that next step towards where you want to be? The other thing that this lab kind of offers with respect to all of that is it does offer some programming talking about the different options and different pathways that you have kind of moving forward into the healthcare space. And so especially kind of in that medical school domain, I'm really kind of well-versed in being able to help people understand, if you want a master's degree in public health, for example, where are the different parts kind of in your kind of career process where you can actually get that done? Do you have to do that before medical school, or are there going to be other options down the road for you to do that type of thing? And those are types of conversations that I can have with students, and that we're working on kind of developing kind of some group understanding in this lab about, so that we can help kind of counsel and kind of educate one another. The other thing that I feel that this lab really does is that it does empower students to overcome kind of personal and professional obstacles by providing adaptability and kind of using smart solutions to address problems. One of the things that I guess I would hope the students in the lab would say is that, I'm quite flexible with things. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to micromanage you and kind of tell you, you need to do this by this point in time and whatever. Like, we will set goals. There's going to be kind of expectations of meeting kind of certain endpoints, and our lab managers tend to really kind of stay on that a little bit more in terms of helping to kind of push things forward. But, we're flexible. If something comes up, if a death in the family comes up, if, some friend is having some sort of major mental health crisis, if you have a family member that's sick, we will work with you to make sure that you can stay involved in the lab, you can keep getting experience, you can keep contributing to what it is that we're trying to do. But we'll try to find ways to do that in a way where, the time requirement is not onerous, and that, if what you need is a break to kind of step away for a little bit, we can kind of think about what that can look like and when is kind of a reasonable point for you to come back in, and kind of how can we integrate you back into this process. And so I know even over just this past year, with many of the people in the lab, things have come up and we've found ways to kind of problem solve that and work through that so that we can keep everything moving forward with our kind of projects and obligations, but we can also kind of keep people in the lab and kind of engaged in getting this experience that they need. As part of that, obviously it provides access to resources and support. I'm not going to belabor that except for talking about that. It also, helps to build leadership and organizational skills. Because like I said, one of the things that I think is kind of a core feature about this is that as a student in the lab, as one of the members of the lab, you will have responsibilities to kind of yourself, to other people in the lab, to kind of be organized, be on time, be effective, be efficient. But then, as you kind of get settled in that and you kind of build trust among the other people in the lab, there's going to be opportunities for leadership. There's going to be opportunities for doing, some of the things that I've already mentioned in terms of, being a lab manager, being a data manager, running kind of our evaluation planning and learning those skills, right? And so these are all things that you can kind of take with you to the next level. And that, again, I think are benefits of being in this space. And then, I think kind of the summary point with all of this is that every aspect of what we do really focuses on providing opportunities for growth and innovation. We're always trying to improve. We're always trying to do better. We're always trying to kind of, think about this kind of attributes of the people in the lab, the strengths they have, and how we can leverage those things to work more effectively and efficiently as a group, so that we can be a healthier and stronger organization, and so that we can be also even more effective at, excuse me, at some of the research that we're trying to do. Sorry about that. So finally, I think the kind of last thing that I want to hit on is going to be the lab members' expectations. There's all these wonderful things I'm kind of trying to sell you on the lab with. But what does that actually mean for you? What do you have to commit to us to really, be a part of this lab? The first, and what I feel is probably the most important thing, is that you communicate. I expect everybody in the lab to communicate early, often, and openly. That's not necessarily easy. Like this is, especially since we do everything really on Zoom. We're trying to figure out some ways to have a little bit more like in-person activities kind of in the upcoming year, but everything that is really business related for this lab is going to continue to happen on Zoom, because we do kind of span two campuses. We span the Ohio State campus and the Nebraska campus. And so they're obviously not close. We've got to keep working in this kind of setting. That does require a level of comfort in kind of talking in these spaces and being willing to kind of reach out, either through private messages to me or to the lab managers or other people in the lab to kind of get help and support if there are challenges that come up. If there needs to be some sort of absence, if there's some sort of important event that comes up, like there's exams, or there's some sort of other like a presentation or whatever it is that comes up that you need to go do, the only thing that we really ask is that you just communicate with us so that we know where everybody's at. We know kind of where you're at with your work. And that, again, we have an understanding of what's going on, so we can kind of work with you if there's anything that we need to help you make up or anything along those lines. The other thing that we, again, kind of expect people to do in this space is get comfortable asking for clarification of expectations or how to accomplish tasks. That's not going to be something people are comfortable with right off the bat. And so that is something that, we think about on our side as we're kind of leading this and we're working on kind of building our culture. We try to kind of provide opportunities to help people kind of warm up to that and help people kind of grow comfortable in that way. But I do think you have to come into this lab with a certain amount of understanding that it is going to be on you to kind of ask for things and speak up. We're going to try to create a space where you feel safe and comfortable doing that, but you do need to kind of reflect on whether that's something that you're going to be able to kind of do. And again, overall, I think we have people in the lab that have kind of come on a kind of wide spectrum with respect to comfort in doing that. And I think everybody's kind of grown in that domain. But again, that's something that I think you need to think about when you're thinking about applying to this lab. We do ask that everybody acts in ways that are aligned with our lab values. And so again, there's kind of a reminder of our lab values along the bottom. We do ask in terms of commitment that Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern and Thursday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for about an hour, you are available for meetings. The Tuesday 7 p.m. time is our main lab meeting. That's the time that we're kind of using right now for this meeting. The Thursday 7:30 p.m. is a pre-lab meeting. What that meeting is a meeting with lab managers, project managers, your colleagues, to kind of make sure that everybody's up to date on the training and kind of expectations for that week. Make sure that any sort of questions that need to be answered are answered. If there's like reconciliation that needs to be done, with our data or anything like that. Those are things that can kind of happen during that set time slot. And so again, it's important that you're able to meet these two kind of meeting times each week. And I try to make this, kind of clear at this stage of things so that you can plan for this as you're scheduling your classes for, the upcoming semesters. The other thing that we kind of expect is that people will be doing individual tasks, they'll be doing team tasks, they'll be doing professional development tasks kind of as assigned. We do expect a minimum of 7 hours a week worth of time. That includes the 2 hours of meetings. So if you think about that, that's 2 hours of those meetings each week, and then an additional 5 hours that is committed to working on the research projects. Now, this is something that is an average. And so, for those weeks where you're really busy with other obligations, we understand that. But the kind of hope and expectation is that you will make up those hours at a later point in time, so that we can keep our project moving forward and we can make sure that we're meeting the goals and kind of objectives of this lab in terms of putting out a high quality research project. That does mean that you are expected to be proactive, you're expected to be independent, you're expected to be team self-driven, and you're expected to really have a team-oriented approach. Again, not everybody who has come into this lab is, like in the top marks of all of these things right from the beginning, and that's okay. But I do think that this lab kind of forces you to grow in that way, and it does force you to really reflect on, like, are you going to be able to hold yourself accountable to putting in kind of that time outside of those regular meeting times to really get this work done? Can you force yourself to actually do that and stay on task and get the hours kind of in that you need to get done without, again, me sitting there and kind of micromanaging you and always checking on your hours and always kind of making sure that you're doing that, or even without the lab managers sitting there and doing that, because our lab managers have a lot of responsibilities and they can't sit there and just kind of babysit your hours as well. And so again, that's a thing to kind of think about for yourself. That I find that, for college students, depending on especially where you're at kind of in your college career, that might be a hard thing, and that's fine. We're happy to provide a space for kind of growth on that. That is something that you have to be committed to really working on and kind of developing as being a part of this lab. And then that kind of gets to that last kind of piece. You're expected to be accountable for meeting the commitments of the lab and documenting what you've done. There's a lot of, since we're working in this kind of digital space, it's hard for us necessarily to know sometimes if you're doing certain things that you need to do without you documenting it. And for me, in terms of writing letters of recommendation and feeling comfortable kind of signing off on those for you all, I do expect you to kind of keep a running record of your hours and what it is that you've been doing in the lab. And we provide a document for doing that. And that's something that you're expected to really update as often as you work, weekly, kind of at latest, but every time you work, you should really be logging your hours. But again, that's kind of part of a commitment that we expect you to really kind of follow through on as part of being a part of this lab. Outside of that, though, I don't know that there's any real other kind of major expectations. We are looking for a wide variety of people. Diversity is something that is really important to us. We're not really looking for anybody that's like a cookie cutter of any one of us as individuals. We are, there's kind of a wide variety of kind of skills and attributes that, I think people can bring to this lab and really kind of use to help strengthen it. Yeah, if you have any sort of questions, I'm going to kind of open it up now so that you have an opportunity to ask those. I actually will probably not be the one answering them. I'm going to let the kind of students in the lab answer them, because I think they're maybe better people to kind of address your questions, because they are your colleagues and they've kind of been through all of this. But if you do have any questions, particularly for me or anything that you want to talk to me about, my email address and contact information is provided below. I'll also hang out a few minutes kind of at the end of all of this if you want to talk to me during that period of time, or if something comes up during this discussion that other people are not feeling like they want to address, I'll kind of chime in there as well. But again, I'm going to kind of open it up now if there's any questions that you all want to ask any of the members of our lab, and just reiterate that what we're looking for is for your application to be submitted by Sunday, May 20th. So you can use the URL that is kind of on this slide. So go.osu.edu/power app to get to this application, or there's a QR code on the screen. And there were a couple of things that came up in the chat. Yeah, so Caden just provided a form kind of in the chat that you can fill out if you want to ask any sort of questions in an anonymous way.
I'm gonna launch a poll. RAs and lab managers don't fill out the poll, just the people who are interested in applying and came tonight.
And what I think we'll go ahead and do now is go ahead and end the recording, Caden.